let's get right to it then. I think Matt is gonna
Oh,
both run the
Nat.
numbers for
Oh,
us.
oh, Nat.
And Matt's gonna go all night long.
I'm going to run the
Matt,
numbers, and Josh is going to go first. So,
yeah.
Yes.
Lionel Richie's
Hmm.
"Can't Slow Down" comes in at number 74. I'm sorry, 781 in the 1980s on
That's a
best
pretty
ever
significant
albums.
difference.
I was looking at the
74.
year.
No, wait, I'm at 7,687.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was looking at the year. It's
Yeah.
74 in 1983, number 5,116 of all time. It is Lionel Richie's highest rated album. And he comes in at number 2,413 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums. So, not terribly highly regarded on this website. But, Josh, I think you're starting things off. So go ahead.
Wow.
Oh, wait, where are we getting this out? How did we get this album? This is not in Rolling Stone. Is
This
this
was
a
when
Josh
we
special?
no,
Yeah.
when we decided to expand out the list, right? Instead of kind of just using best ever albums or Rolling Stone, and we were
Yeah.
like, for the cold listens, I said I want some more representation as opposed to just going the highest list. So I had Josh also do choices for me, and I said like name some bands. And actually, three bands this week were bands that Josh picked to add
So we
to
have
the
Josh
podcast.
specials.
Yeah.
We have Josh picked Lionel Richie, Huey Lewis, and Dio. Were all albums that Josh picked to
Oh, the
add to
first
our
three.
list.
Okay.
So there you go.
Well, why did I pick this album? I think because it was a very popular album at the time, as I alluded to at the end of the last episode. I remember my parents having this album and hearing some of these songs, and a lot of not a lot, but many of these songs on this album are quite popular and well known, like All Night Long and Hello, which is with the hilarious music video, and Stuck on You. I remember that one as well. And this is kind of the, I don't know if it's, we kind of come and go with R&B, right? We tackle it, it kind of makes an appearance, and then it kind of fades off, and we never really go in depth with the genre. And I'm not even sure if we get a full representation of R&B through the years. I feel like we last talked about it. Have we even talked about it this decade? Maybe. Oh well, Rick
R&B?
James, right? Yeah, and
Luther
and
Vandross.
yep. So those are the
Diana
last
Ross.
two, and I think this is kind of the next iteration or mass appeal version of R&B that we're gonna get. It's very smooth. I mean, that is the word to characterize this. Lionel Richie has a great voice. I think he's most well known at this time as being in the Commodores, right? That's what he was
Correct.
from before he went solo. And the Commodores was not a band that we covered, so I would be interested to. That's like my Lionel Richie fact. That's really the only thing I know about him. Is he was in the Commodores, and it has this. I wouldn't say that. Like okay, let me say.
He was
Like
a producer, I think, Lionel Richie too.
oh really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense because this album sounds really well produced, and it's crisp and clean, and it does kind of remind me of some of the things that we heard in Thriller and the Michael Jackson album in terms of kind of synth effects. And Steve Lukather of Toto makes an appearance on Running with the Night in the guitar solo, so there's a crossover there as well because he was on Thriller. And Lionel Richie's really, like Luther Vandross, just trying to kind of make love songs and something that would have mass appeal, and there's nothing that's necessarily edgy about him. There's really no edge to Lionel Richie that I saw in this. Incorporating some maybe some Caribbean music in like All Night Long, and Stuck on You is almost like a country song. I'm not sure if that's been covered or not, but I hear it as a country song when I listen to his version.
Well, he produced Kenny Rogers and has
Oh,
collaborated
okay.
with Alabama. As I remember, I did a quick peek into the thing right here I'm looking at, and yes, he was a
Interesting.
producer, so I remembered correct. And he's most notable for producing Kenny Rogers and Alabama. So there you go. So
Interesting.
good catch, Josh.
Alabama, another band that I remember my parents having cassettes of. Weird. So I'm really in peak peak parent mode of music right now. But
Dad rock.
yeah, something. And so I mean, I didn't. What can I say about Lionel Richie? I didn't hate this album. I thought it was easy to listen to. I think that's by design, and I enjoyed some of the songs. I think really the first half is pretty solid, and then I kind of lost interest, through the end. But I did like Running with the Night's guitar solo. That was pretty rad. And it's just this incorporation of R&B with the synth and like the smooth music that is around at this time. And I'm going to give this a thumbs in the middle. I didn't think there was anything too surprising about this, but it was pleasant to listen to.
I think I'm higher on this than you are, Josh. I really like this record.
Really?
And it's kind of interesting because for R&B, I think a lot of the R&B albums that we have covered, I think a lot of times my take is very similar, that I tend to like the upbeat songs better than the ballads. And I like the ballads on here almost as much as the upbeat songs. I thought that I like the mix of what he's doing. It certainly helped that I knew some of these songs already. Obviously, All Night Long is a great pop song, very danceable, a lot of fun. And I think that I totally forgot about Stuck on You, so that was the surprise. I was like, oh yeah, I know that song. So I like his vocals there. And Hello's a good song as well. But the songs I kind of liked the second half, Josh. I thought Running with the Night had a really cool kind of chord progression in there. I thought The Only One had a really good chorus to it, and I really liked that ballad there. Thought the opening was great, Can't Slow Down. I mean, for just a general R&B record that's it's still got that 80s sheen all over it, with a lot of the it's not just synths, it's the keyboards. I think it's got this smooth jazz kind of keyboard that was very, I think, popular in 80s popular music. Mm-hmm. So in some ways it seems dated, but I think that the songs themselves stand up fairly well. And I think musically they're really good. And Lionel Richie's kind of one of those artists for me that's always been around, and I never really paid too much mind to him, just never really got into him. And I actually remember several years ago, I was at Bonnaroo and he was playing the main stage. And a bunch of my family members went to go see him, and I think I sat back and I watched. I think I saw Warpaint or something, another band. And when I met up with my friends and family members later on, everybody was like raving about Lionel Richie, about how he was one of the best shows of the whole festival, and everybody was dancing. The crowd got super into it. Even my younger cousins, who probably didn't really know a whole lot about Lionel Richie, was in love with that. And then after listening to this record, it kind of like, man, yeah, that would have been a really fun show. I think I enjoyed the Warpaint set, but it might have been more fun for me to see this. So I don't know. This was I had 2 weeks to listen to this, so I listened to it more, and the more I listened to it, the more I liked it.
Yeah.
I'm thumbs up. I mean, it's not breaking down any barriers. It's not it's not like anything new, but I think it's really solid, and I like the songs that I already knew, and I really enjoyed the songs I didn't. So I didn't really find any duds on here for me, and so I'm thumbs up on it. This was a fun listen. A nice little palate cleanser too, little change of pace, I think, so it's good. We're covering something different.
Yeah. This is like R&B for people that like their Sex Missionary, their vacations at Sandals, and their pizza on Fridays.
Oh, come on!
I love R&B, and I do. But this is that lane of R&B that does nothing for me. I'll be very honest with you. Yeah. I think it's like it tries to appeal to everyone. So in doing that, I think what you sacrifice a little bit is making a great album. I think that's what I talked about. Like, what was truly amazing about Thriller was that it was the rare album that was for everyone, that also maintained a level of edge to it, which is like kind of unfathomable when you think about it. But usually when you shoot for your crossover or your big, you give up a little bit. It doesn't mean it's bad, but it's there. I just felt like this was not in. While there were funk elements at times, there wasn't nearly enough to kind of groove in. Lionel Richie's voice is perfectly cromulent, but it's not so transcendent that you're like, when you're listening to like somebody with a soulful voice or a distinctive voice. It's just there and pleasant
Yeah.
enough. But even compared to like Luther Vandross, who we heard earlier, right? And we kind of were lukewarm on that album. I think I kind of mentioned that the thing that was appealing about that album was the tone of Luther Vandross's voice. And when we think to like some of the R&B we did in the 70s, like Marvin Gaye or Bill Withers or just all of those voices just grabbed me more. It's all love songs, which is okay. Hello is fine in like a meme worthy sort of modern era way and like over the top. This album's kind of like what AOR is for rock, but it's like that quiet storm R&B, but also pushed beyond just, I guess, traditional black radio. This one was designed to go outside of that as well.
Yep.
And thus it brought in elements, like you said, Josh, of country and a little bit of rock and even a little bit of world sounds, right? Congos and stuff at different times. But yeah, it just didn't do a lot for me, man. It just kind of it existed as a series of sort of, and going into this, I'll be honest, I was interested to do Lionel Richie because I've been sort of underwhelmed by him as a singles guy too, and I knew a fair amount of songs, not just on this album but on other ones. Like this one didn't have like Say You Say Me or Dancing on the Ceiling,
Dancing on the
right?
Ceiling,
Other
yeah.
ones, and Truly, right? Wasn't that an Endless Love? He's got a ton of them, right? But one thing that stands out about all of them is that like I never connected with any of them. Just all of them are just songs that I'm like the equivalent of that, like like along the way. And so I'm like, maybe there's like a deeper layer. There just wasn't for me, and it was not a bad album. It just falls in that category of, it's like a rock album when you listen to like Collective Soul, right? Would be like, where it's like you don't hate it, but like there's nothing that ever says like put this back on for me, no matter how many singles there are on it. And I think that's where this fell for me. It just there's so many albums like in this genre I love, and there's also so many albums we're listening to that are really intriguing me. I think it's taken a lot to stand out in this era in the pop world, right? Because when you're listening to like Michael Jackson and then Bruce Springsteen throw like his best pop album, and we haven't even touched on like Madonna yet, or and we got Prince, right? It's just tough to stand out in that landscape. It's like I just heard Purple Rain and Thriller,
Yeah.
and it's like, yeah, this is fine, but I think it suffers a little bit in that comparison too, which may be unfair. But yeah, in the context of what this show is, I think I might have to give this a slight thumbs down for me, just because of the sort of the context that's been set here in the 80s, and the albums were maybe in terms of the totality of the 80s, it falls in the middle, but in terms of the albums we've covered, it falls a little bit more on the lesser side. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think. I mean, yes, it's there's no edge here. Like I said, it's not groundbreaking or anything like that. But I also don't know. I also, even doing this podcast and listening to all these different things, I don't think I need to enjoy an album or enjoy a song or an artist or whatever. I don't think I need it to stand up against like the titans of the decade. I think I can still, I still enjoy this, and still think that like Springsteen and Michael Jackson and Prince and all these other artists are better and more and yeah, better overall. But that doesn't make me go, it's gonna be a notch down for me. It was a really easy listen, and maybe as a non R&B guy, maybe it makes sense that I would like something that's more for everyone, and would like that or appreciate that more. But yeah, I don't know. To me, I don't think I need to have it broken down like that, to always kind of compare it to other things. Even though we're doing the podcast, I think I can still enjoy something and recognize that it's not the most amazing thing ever, but it was an enjoyable listen nonetheless.
Yeah, I think the crossover appeal to a wider demographic, mainly i.e. white people, was a huge part of this album's success. And I mean, I saw that it's the third best selling album of 1984 and beat out Purple Rain in terms of copies sold, and it sold 20 million copies, so it's a fucking gigantic album. No.
Well, I mean, but Prince isn't for everybody, like Lionel Richie.
Right.
I mean, some people
Yeah,
think
yeah.
he's too sexual. You know, there's
Yeah.
too much of funk guitar. You know, like
Yep.
it's too. Yeah,
And that's what I think you're saying, John. Is I wish some of those elements would have made an appearance in here, and I probably would have liked it more. It's like you said, it's perfectly fine to listen to, but there wasn't enough to make me return to it or have some depth to it.
And I think to build on what Matt said, I don't think I have to have albums stand out within the decade itself. I think, though, it has to stand out within the genre it's in. And so, like, if I listen to 10 albums that are pop albums with R&B elements, right? Like, and you're clocking in at number 8, 9, or 10, does that hurt my enjoyability factor when I kind of know where it stands? And the thing, a little bit, I'm not going to lie. You know, I remember we used to have this talk in the 60s, right, Matt, where you would often say, I don't think I'd hate this album as much if they didn't say it was the number 15 album of the 60s, right? So, like,
Yes.
I think this is kind of the equivalent for me of that, where it's like, if we're going to put this in the pantheon, right?
Well, this is also the number 781 of the decade. I mean, it's not in the
Well,
pantheon. It's
but what I'm
sold a
saying
lot,
is-
but it's not critically revered.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. I think for me, it's more like if I'm going to hold it up, right, at art, right, at the same level, like, I'm not going to judge it the same if it doesn't feel to me. It's kind of the same idea, but just different.
Are you always holding it up as art, though? I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to hold this up as art. I'm just looking at this going, there's some catchy tunes in here. There's some really interesting parts, and it was an enjoyable listen, and it's just like, leave it at that.
Yeah, I struggle with that sometimes because I'm always thinking of the system a little bit, you know, and the journey. And I think a lot of times I'm like, where does this fit in? Like, is it an essential album? Is it a non-essential? And if I sort of say this is a non-essential album, it's tougher for me to say I can enjoy an album that's a non-essential album, but often I find that albums I find to be non-essential are also albums that I don't enjoy. So that's a long way of me saying also I didn't like this album that much, man. I also wonder if you hadn't heard this album growing up, if you would like it as much, because I don't think it deviates too much from albums that you didn't like as much but weren't as familiar with. And I wonder if just the nostalgia of Lionel Richie might inform a little bit of it for you.
That would be possibly true if I didn't like the deeper cuts that I didn't know as much.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Oh, there you go. Well,
it's not just like 2 or 3 songs that I liked. It was the other songs that kind of made me go, oh, okay. Like, yeah, I like that. You know, it was...
so fair enough. We just have a difference of opinion. Yeah. But this is a different type of... I almost struggle to call this R&B, because to me this is more like crossover pop music than it is what
It's like adult contemporary.
Adult contemporary is a good term for it, yes. Absolutely. Yep.
Oh, Running with the Night was the second single. Interesting. I don't think I ever heard that song before.
I didn't either. I like that song quite a bit, actually. Yeah.
I wish he would have kind of gone up tempo a bit more on this album. I think that was one of the things that was lacking for me too. It felt too slow and too many ballads for me.
Well, and some of the songs, a lot of these songs are 5-6 minutes long, right?
Yeah,
so if
I
some of
noticed
them
that
you don't
also.
like, it's I could see them being too long. I don't know. I didn't really have much. This was it was just an easy listen, right? So normally, like, I'm like, I got to listen to this album over and over again, and I got to try to find the part and find the thing or whatever. And this was, I don't know. In some ways, this was nice to do that, just to put a record on and let it be what it is. You know.
Mm-hmm.
To me, R&B should only go like 5-6 minutes if like the last minute and a half is just people like screaming like, I need you, I want, like just like fully like Mary J. Blige, Jodeci, you know, just emptying the gun, you know what I mean? Just letting it, like the gospel spirit, like that's what I want. If it's gonna go to like the 4 or 5 minute mark, like I want it to be like full on, you know,
passion,
right? Yeah, if you're gonna not bring that and it's gonna be a tighter, I want it to be like the Bill Withers approach, where it's like no more than 4 minutes and I get the essence, right? You know, I just I appreciate that. But to me, it's got to go into sort of like the gospel sort of emotional domain. If you're just sort of like doing an extended interlude, like a lot of these songs were, I just don't know if All Night Long needs to be 6 minutes and 25 seconds. You know? I don't know if Running with the Night needs to be 6 minutes and 2 seconds. So you don't think of a single being 6 minutes and 25 seconds like All Night Long.
There was probably a radio edit.
Yeah. So
there's also 12 12-inch extended mix of that song. So
Like what
right.
would
Dance
it would have
floor.
been extended doing? Like more like congos, or would it have been like those disco songs we talked about? Where
It's only 20 seconds longer. It's
Oh,
6:42 instead of 6:25.
that's kind of what it felt like though. That Donna Summer album, right, where there
Yeah.
were bits and pieces. Although I like that album a lot more than I like this one, and that there were things I liked, but then you're like, did this really need to stay away for 8? And then we realized it was to have you dance, so maybe that was kind of. Or we said like do cocaine in the bathroom and then come back and dance, which is why it was 8 to 9 minutes. But which I found out, by the way, was true. We were joking about that, but actually there was some truth to that because it was like transition in the dance floor a little bit. There was some truth to that idea, but it's neither here nor there.
There
This
are
is-
a ton of people performing on this record, by the
I
way.
know this is like
yeah.
the most in-depth personnel on an album that I've seen in a while.
It's
on
up there.
Wikipedia.
Any notables?
Well, pretty much all the famous session musicians are on here at the time.
The only one that I recognize is was it Porcaro? Jeff Porcaro plays drums on Running with the Night.
Yeah,
How would
Steve-
I know
Steve
Jeff
Lukather?
Porcaro?
yeah,
Porcaro, he was a Toto guy, wasn't he?
yeah.
Okay, that
And
was about to
Steve
say the
Lukather,
Toto-
he is of yacht rock fame.
Yes, Greg Fillinganes is another one of those guys. Big session musician.
This is kind of like the Toto of R&B, although there was no Hold the Line on this album, so yeah.
no
Right. Yeah.
David Foster also. He's pretty famous.
Okay, yes, David Foster's definitely famous. Gotcha.
This is random, but I find it hilarious when they're naming songs that they put All Night Long, and then in parentheses they had put All Night, like they felt they needed to add that.
All night,
That's an important part of the song.
all night,
I know, but does it need to be in the title?
all
Yeah.
night, all night.
Have we ever done something where there's 2 albums in a row that have like random song titles, like Stuck on You? Like there's this, and then Huey Lewis and the News infamously have a Stuck on You, right?
Stuck
Not in
with you.
sports.
Stuck
Stuck-
with You. Oh, Stuck with You. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. I was about to say, so it's not exactly
Different
the
type of
same.
stuck.
It's different type of stuff, but close.